It's time for my week 2 best bets. I'm always transparent on my channel. I want to show you my record for week 1. We went 7-8 overall. We're definitely going to recuperate from that. And if we split this up between spread bets and Moneyline Parlay bets, the spreads went 5-8 and the Moneyline Parlays went 2-0. Now let me say something here. Those Moneyline Parlay bets are killing it again. These went 18-4 last year in 2024. I started these in last year in the first week in 2024. And now that record is 20 wins and 4 losses for an amazing 83% hit rate on Moneyline Parlay bets. And these are not giving out minus 200, minus 250. It was minus 130 on one of those bets last weekend and minus 101 on the other. Now, I want to say something about these spread bets here. Even though it says 5-8, there were 2 spread bets that actually went in my favor, but it was only because the closing line value was different than what it was when I put up my video. And that happens sometimes. So if we waited for the closing line numbers, then this spread bets actually would have went 7-6. My whole video would have been 9-6. Now, I'm not one that's going to complain about what I did, what I won, what I didn't win, but I want to make something very clear. The spread numbers and the total numbers that are in my data set, the data set that I use for these trends, those numbers are based on closing line values. So this might sound a little bit strange, but if you actually wait closer to game time, you might get better numbers. You actually might win more bets based on these trends. Let me show you the example with the Tennessee Titans. Last weekend, the Titans were at the Broncos. I said take the Titans at plus 7.5 because that satisfied the trend where you take dogs at 6.5 or more to cover the spread in week 1. Well, if you wait until Sunday on 9-7, the Titans were 8.5 point underdogs. And since they lost to the Broncos 20-12, that bet actually worked. So one more time, because my data uses closing line numbers, this week 1 trend actually went 2-1. Not 1-2. That's kind of the fine arts of sports betting. Do you want to wait closer to game time or do you want to take those bets early on? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. All right, let's get on to our week 2 best bets. I have 2 very powerful trends for week 2, some of the best trends I have for the entire season. And one thing you're going to hear a lot of people talk about is week 2 is overreaction week. What do I mean by that? Check out this first trend. Again, my data goes back to 2015. Teams that won at home in week 1 do not cover the spread in week 2 at a rate of 60%. That's 39 out of 65 games. Now let's break this down a little bit. Teams that won in week 1, because we only have 1 week now to draw our conclusions about these teams, we might think those teams that won are doing pretty good. But if they won at home, maybe they had the advantage of playing at home, right? Home crowd, sleeping in their own beds, playing in their own stadium. So maybe that home field advantage helped them win that game. But maybe they're not as good as we think they are. Anyways, this is a trend where we do not place bets on those teams. In fact, we fade these teams and bet on their opponents to cover the spread. And one more thing here, if we actually go from 2017 to 2024, the last 8 years of data, then this actually goes up to 65.4% or 34 out of 52 games. So this is a very strong trend for week 2. And here are the teams that satisfy this trend. The Rams won at home in week 1, so we bet on the Titans plus 5.5 to cover the spread. The Bills won in an amazing comeback fashion against the Ravens in week 1. The Bills were at home, so we bet on just to cover a 6.5 point spread to follow this trend. And the Eagles won at home against the Cowboys. So that means we bet on the Chiefs plus 1.5 at home to cover the spread. Now I mentioned the Colts and the Broncos earlier. Well, the Commanders and the Packers, all 4 of those teams won at home. But because these teams play each other, it doesn't make any sense to place the bets on these teams because basically we would be betting on both of these teams, which makes no sense at all. So in the case where both of these teams satisfy the trend, we just simply lay off that game. The second trend is what I call the Benson special. Again, I have amazing subscribers. One particular one, Benson, takes a deep dive into the data and finds some amazing trends. This particular trend went 5-0 in week 2 last year in 2024. In week 2, road underdogs getting 3 to 6.5 points covered the spread at a rate of 69.5% or 41 out of 59 games. And again, if we shorten this up a little bit to 2017 and the last 8 years, this goes to an amazing 77.3%. 34 out of 44 games, these teams covered the spread. I kind of like to think of these road underdogs as not small dogs, not big dogs, but kind of in the middle dogs. Now, why is this true? Perhaps these road underdogs in week 2 are getting undervalued. Teams in week 2 that satisfy this trend are the Commanders at the Packers. Now, I just said, according to that last trend, we would not bet on either one of these teams, but this trend is different. And this trend says take the Commanders plus 3.5. Let me say something about this. Anytime we have 2 trends, it doesn't happen very often, but sometimes 2 trends might actually contradict each other on a particular game. I always get this question, which team do you bet on then? It's not necessarily a stay away situation. What I do is take the trend that wins at a higher percentage. In this case, 77.3% is amazing. So I'm definitely picking the Commanders plus 3.5 to cover the spread. We also have the Jaguars plus 3.5 at the Bengals, the Giants plus 5.5 at the Cowboys, and the Bears plus 6.0 at the Lions. And there are 2 more teams. We have the Seahawks plus 3.0 at the Steelers and the Falcons plus 5.0 at the Vikings. That's a total of 6 spread bets for this one trend alone that hits at 77.3%. If you combine that with the 3 spread bets in the earlier trend, that's a total of 9 spread bets in this video. And guess what? I have 1 Moneyline Parlay bet for this week. Let's check it out. Again, home teams favored by 6.5 to 7 points, winning rate of 76.9%. That has actually gone up if you consider week 1 of this year. And we have one team that satisfies this trend. And road teams favored by 5.5 to 6 points, winning rate of 75.6% since 2015. And we have a team that satisfies that trend as well. So what's our Moneyline Parlay Bet? We have the Rams favored by 5.5 points on the road against the Titans. And we have the Cardinals favored by 6.5 points at home against the Panthers. So we put the Rams to win and the Cardinals to win together in a Moneyline Parlay Bet. We get parlay odds of minus 109. But we take those two percentages, multiply them together, we get trend odds of minus 139. Now I have to mention this again because I always get questions about this. Just because I picked the Titans plus 5.5 according to that one trend, but I'm picking the Rams to win, those are two separate bets. In fact, both of those things can hit. In fact, last weekend in week 1, the Cowboys covered a 7.5 point spread, but the Eagles won. And I had the Eagles in a Moneyline Parlay Bet with the Commanders. The Titans can cover the spread and the Rams can win at the same time. Hope you enjoyed this video. On Thursday, I'm going to put out my spread model best bets Thursday morning. And on Saturday morning, I'm going to put out my survivor pick. And so far, all my survivor picks, I have 3 entries, are still alive. Good luck in your week 2 best bets. Let's go.